Greetings in the love and light of the infinite creator. I'm Andrii Zvorygin, joined here today by Dan, Roger, and Julian. And we have in line for you guys several presentations, some on some seismic data from the US. And Jean, when he will join us, will have some slides about the US reserve numbers and projections. And then I will have a presentation on transition and what do we do about it, because a lot of people have been asking. Okay, so I'm seeing the YouTube questions, and one of them is about the shale oil proppant produces massive increases in oil recovery production. I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but I heard from what I saw, it increases 10 to 15% how much shale you get. I don't know if anyone, Dan, have you heard of it? Or...
I have heard of it. I've seen some of the mathematics. The biggest issue they're dealing with all the shale patches is actually recovered water. That's the limiting factor of shale production. So it doesn't really matter how much you prove it on the front end. The produced water, getting rid of the produced water is the limiting factor.
Oh, okay. And because it's kind of like a toxic substance?
It's radioactive.
It's radioactive. Okay. Yeah, that's tough. Okay. Oh, and I see Barbara's joined us today as well. And so another one was hydrogen on demand, which I guess uses electrolysis. I don't know if we, and I don't know if anyone had any comments on that. And then they had, we also had a question also about Wilston. Someone was claiming that it won't run out during their lifetime. And what do you think of that claim?
Math is it says a different story. I wish it were different.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And so yeah, I was reading over here that I think it depends on the numbers they're looking at. It says Bakken plus Three Forks has 100 to 400 billion barrels in place, but USGS and studies expect only 7 to 10 billion barrels to be technically recoverable. And they've already pumped 5 billion barrels. And so there's about 1.2 million barrels a day, or 0.4 billion barrels a year. So that's really not looking like there's going to be very much left.
I think the issue, Andrew, is you've got the USGS and scientists, and basically they're dealing with the theoretical world. And of course, they're tied into politics, and politicians don't like to hear bad stories. And then you've got the people actually out in the field doing the production and all the physical things that you have to go through to bring production to the market. And those worlds don't tell the truth. The drillers are saying a very different story than what the politicians at the USGS are saying, and that's just reality.
Okay, thanks. All right. Hi, John, as well. And so we still don't have Jan Laherrere, so how about, Dan, you go ahead with your slides for now.
Okay. I can't find... Okay, can you see the screen?
I'm still okay. I'm starting to see yes. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Basically a big geothermal power plant. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
That's a geothermal power plant.
That is a Raft River. It should be the Raft River geothermal power plant.
I'm seeing like a field and some green pipes.
Yeah, that's it. Okay.
That's it. Okay.
Oh, here's it. You should see the first slide of the presentation.
There, right. I see the slide. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Electric power and technology. Okay, so my name is Dan Gowin. I'm Chief Technology Officer of Electric Power and Technology. I'm actually a child of the Navy's lab. So anyway, so please forgive some of my terminology. I might use some military terminology in what I talk about. So the presentation I'm giving here is just simply for educational purposes only. Any statements or opinions are subject to change without notice. Basically, the information I'm giving you is reliable as the subjects that are participating in the podcast. Any questions so far? Okay.
Sounds good.
So I'm going to talk about I'm calling it the Gulf of America. Others out there say it's still the Gulf of Mexico. The tool that I'm using is called Map Search, and later on we can talk about what the annual fee that I have to pay to get access to this graphical tool that shows me all the assets out in the Gulf of America. Okay. This here is just a short list of all the companies. You see it, Andrew? Andrew?
Sorry. Oh, I was muted. Okay. Yes, I can see American Midstream to Walter.
Okay, that's why I'm at. So these are all the companies, and if anybody wants to stop the video, the video recording out on YouTube, they can. There's just a short list of all the companies involved in bringing production to bear out in the Gulf of America. I'm sorry. Next one here.
All right.
Okay, can you see the next screen?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So this is a Beacon Shenandoah by Beacon Exploration. The startup was in July of 2025. The depth of the water is 1,767 meters deep. The depth is from the blowout preventer to the bottom of the well. The blowout preventer is a device sitting on the bottom of the ocean. From the blowout preventer to the bottom of the well is 9,144 meters deep. These wells average produce oil about 1,400 bar. That's 20,000 pounds per square inch. So basically, when you drill through the cap rock, there's a huge jump in pressure as the oil and gas come out of the geological structure. Total projected daily production will be 120,000 barrels of oil equivalent per day. They haven't published basically an estimation or projected recoverable reserves out of this deposit. So I haven't made that public. Understand these companies, when they drill out in the Gulf of America, they supply data to the federal government as to, basically the block that they've rented out to basically do the drilling, but they also provide a lot of this technical data. Basically, they have to agree to make data public or not public in this tool. This tool definitely shows the geographical location of what type of devices they're in drilling and what they're doing. But I'm just trying to say is not all the data is public. So I'm just showing you the data that they're made available to the public. Okay, so we'll go to the next slide. Has it updated yet, Andrew?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Beacon
Winterfell. It's a subsalt discovery. That's a block 944. A total of 5 wells will be drilled. Water depth will be from 1,615 meters to 1,767 meters. The depth from the blowout preventers will average from 7,010 meters to 8,686 meters. So these are 7 and 8 kilometer deep wells. Total projected reserves is unknown at this time. And basically what they're doing is they're drilling into an undersea mountain under the ocean, on the bottom of the ocean. And that's why you've got these differences on water depths and how deep they have to actually drill the wells to get at the oil and the gas. And this was first oil was discovered in July of 2024.
Wow. So those little blue areas, that's where the oil is?
Right. It's an overhead look. If you were, you look at the 3D seismic surveys, it shows these blobs that are underground, what the depths they're at. And until they actually drill it, they don't know actually what it is. And they drilled it and of course found oil in July of 2024. So so basically they're projecting they're going to drill this many more wells. There's where they're going to drill them. And like I said, they haven't came out with what's the total recoverable reserves of whenever they bring these assets to market. We'll find that out probably later on. They'll publish the data. But right now, this is oil that they're going to be coming online. Now, understand that it probably won't be till 2030 before any of this oil and gas actually makes it to the market, because it takes a long time to build all this infrastructure out there. Next one here. So this is BP's starts up Argos. That's an expansion of existing field. The water depth is unknown. The depth from the blowout preventer to the bottom where the oil is unknown. Total projected production will be 140,000 barrels of oil per day. They haven't published what are the recoverable reserves and some of the data I'm looking for, which is what's the depth of the water, what's the total depth of the well from the blowout preventer to the actual deposit of oil. They haven't.
And is the blow-up preventer, is that near the seafloor?
They put it on the seafloor. The blowout preventer is on the seafloor. Whenever the drill rig finished drilling the well, they disconnect the drill rig from the blowout preventer. The rig goes on to another project. And then what they do is they come up afterward with what they call a processing unit. I've got a processing unit on one of the slides here. And they hook the processing unit up to the wellhead on the blowout preventer on the bottom of the ocean. And then they start pumping oil to a processing center. to process the oil. They have to separate the oil from the natural gas, also water. There's to produce water. And of course, they have to have injection wells where they inject the water back down into the formation. So, but yeah, I'll show one of the processing centers. I've got a slide here. One of them, I'll show you what it looks like. Next one here. So British Petroleum, another discovery called Green Canyon. 584 is the block. Water depth is 365 meters deep. The depth from the blow-up preventer to the bottom of the well is 10,058 meters deep. Total projected reserves at this time are unknown. So this would be another one of those, whenever they basically what they call spudding the well, they put the blow-up preventer, they've discovered the oil, they close it off, and the drill rig will move to the next well they're going to drill, and then later on they'll follow up with a production rig to actually bring the oil up from the blow-up preventer, to the surface, process the oil, the natural gas, and before they start loading this product onto an oil tanker. Okay. Next one here. Okay, this is one of those processing centers. This is a production hub. It's certified for 1,400 barrel oil, so it's certified up to oil and gas at 20,000 pounds per square inch of pressure. The platform is scheduled to start production on or about 2030, so that gives you an idea how long it takes to put this equipment in place. This processing platform will be able to process 80,000 barrels of oil and barrels of oil equivalent per day. This processing center will be tied into 6 wells in the Tiber field and 2 wells in the Guadalupe offshore oil fields. The projected reserves from the Tiber and the Guadalupe oil fields projected reserves are not known at this time. But that's what one of the production facilities looks like.
There's a lot of question marks, and these numbers aren't very large, it seems. Or I don't know, are these like typical numbers? 80,000?
Well, it averages between 80,000 and sometimes well over 100,000 barrels equivalent per day. So it just all depends. Okay. But the point is, I'm giving you an idea that if they place the platform in place today, understand this is 2025. It won't be till 2030 till this thing will be up and operational and be able to start processing some of this oil and natural gas. So it just takes a long time. They're very expensive to put this in place, this type of equipment. So you're talking about billions of dollars. Yeah. Yeah. The next one here. So this is Chevron. That's called Anchor First. August of 2024 was, I think that was first oil. Water depth is 1,219 meters deep. The depth from the blow-up preventer to the bottom of the well is 10,363 meters. Maximum pressure of the field is 1,500 bar, which is 21,000 psi. It's unknown what the projected recoverable reserves will be at the time. So understand once they found the oil, but later on they'll have to, like I said, put in place a processing rig and so forth to actually bring the oil to market. But the point is, I'm showing you oil that even though it's discovered today, you won't see this oil to it won't make it to the market till the 2030s. So that's the next one I have here. Now here's a good one. So this is LLOG, the depth. This is actually some of the what's left of the shallow oil finds out in the Gulf. Water depth is 82 meters. Depth from the blow-up preventer to the bottom of the well is only 2,133 meters. This is the last Gulf of America operations for LLG exploration. It's unknown what the projected reserves will be when they finally publish it. The project will probably be sold off to a super major oil company. This is one of the last shallow oil finds out in the Gulf. All the new finds that I'm showing you, these are all, the water's 2,000 meters deep. The oil's 7, 8, 9, 10 kilometers deep is how deep the wells are from the blow-up preventer to the bottom of the well. So this is one of the last shallow oil finds out in the Gulf. Everything from here on forward is all ultra deep stuff, very expensive stuff. And basically what the problem is this company isn't able to find enough capital to do some of these bigger projects. So basically it'll end up being the Shells and the Chevrons and the Exxons and BPs that actually have the capital to do some of these ultra deep projects. It's literally, the last of the oil probably here in North America.
I saw you already mentioned one that was like 7 or 8 kilometers deep.
But 10 kilometer deep wells. I did about 3 of them that were 10 kilometers.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. So this is, so you mean, is this the first shallow well you're showing today?
It's the only shallow one that I've got on the list. It's probably the last. It'll probably be the last shallow. that you'll
Oh,
probably
okay.
see out in the Gulf. Everything now from here on out is probably all the deeper stuff,
Hmm.
all the new ones. Yeah. So, yeah, I think the previous one. Let's see if I can look at. Yeah, see, the previous one was 10 kilometers deep.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is deep.
Yep. Yeah. So this is probably the last one for a small company like LNG. It'll be the big guys that have the money, the billions of dollars to invest to go at this oil.
Hmm.
Uh,
And they're not even sure how much is down there a lot of the
nope.
time.
No, not yet. This is the Shale and another super major Shale, Royal Dutch Shale. Production starts at Dover. The water depth is 1,133 meters. The depth from the blowout preventer to the bottom of the well is 9,143 meters. So that's a 9-kilometer deep well. Estimated peak production. These are 1,400 bars of pressure. So the oil and gas are coming out of the wellhead at over 20,000 psi of pressure. Total production will probably be total projected reserves are 45 million barrels of oil equivalent. So total recovery reserves are 45 million barrels. And understand this is barrels of oil equivalent. So it's oil and gas mixture. I don't know what the cut is. It'll tell you how much of it is actually oil and how much is actually natural gas. But usually you can say half. So you can take 45 million, divide by 2. That's probably how much oil is actually there.
Dan, can I ask, are there long laterals or are these pure verticals?
These are just verticals. I've got one in here where they show the horizontal part of it, but they don't tell me the depth or even the depth of the water or the depth of the well. They just show the horizontal. But if there is a part of it that's horizontal, that's a separate figure that they publish is what I'm trying to tell you.
Right. Okay,
it's got a different column in the database. Yeah. I think I've got one here. What's this one? This is Shell Silvertip. Water depth is 4,438 meters. The depth from the blowout preventer bottom is unknown. Projected production will be 12,000 barrels of oil equivalent per day. Projected total recoverables of 120 million barrels of oil equivalent. Remember, that's oil and gas. Divide by 2 is probably 60 million barrels of oil, actual oil.
Oh, okay. So it's somewhere between, half a day to a day of oil for the globe.
There's none of these are billions of barrels. They're all in the hundreds to 400 million barrel and less than 400 million barrels of oil of actual. Well, I mean, barrels of oil equivalent divide by 2, it's basically 200 million barrels of oil. But
up to 2 days for one of these huge multi-billion-dollar deep wells.
None of these are so this is another one by Shale. Water depth is 2,621 meters. Depth from blowout preventer to the bottom of the well is unknown. Total recoveries is 480 millions of barrel oil equivalent. So divide by 2, that's probably 220 million barrels of oil. This is probably one of the largest finds out in the Gulf. That's by Shell. So it's a partnership between Shell and Chevron. So you're 220 million barrels of oil. If you take 480 divided by 2 is 240 million barrels of oil. Yeah. So that's. So this is one where they show the horizontal. So it's water depth is unknown. Depth from the blowout preventer to the bottom well is unknown, but it was horizontally drilled 8,229 meters. They did this in an existing oil field. So the projected recoverables from this well are supposed to be 15 million barrels of oil equivalent. Total projected recoverable in this area is 340 million barrels of oil equivalent. So divide by 2, so that's 170 million barrels of oil possible from that entire production area. So, and you've got was it Katami West is part of it, Demros, Talos, and I think there's another one, but I'm not seeing it here. But yeah, this is one where they show there's a separate column in the database that actually shows the horizontal part of the well.
All right.
Okay. This is a Talos Energy Discovery. Water depth is 365 meters. Depth from the blowout preventer of the bottom of the well is 10,058 meters. So it's another 10-kilometer well. Total projected recoverables is unknown at this time.
Wow. So they're basically spending billions of dollars on things they don't even know what they'll get.
Yeah. Until you drill. I mean, because in the 3D seismic survey, all it shows is there's this blob, and the sound waves are reflecting off this blob. Until they actually drill it. It could be sandstone full of seawater. It could be just all gas. They've had some gas deposits out there. You drill into it, and it was maybe 20% natural gas and 80% carbon dioxide.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Sure.
So that gives you an idea of the risks that you're running. You're spending billions of dollars on something that may not pay. The other thing about it is, when I show the actual last map, it'll show all the. Here, I'll show it to you. This is the total map, and if you look real closely, it's a bunch of little blocks, and each block has a number on it. The United States federal government basically auctions these blocks off. Okay, and it's got a GPS coordinates for the corners, and they basically rent out the corners to the oil companies where they can drill. The blocks that are light blue in color, these are the ones that where the 3D seismic surveys show an object of interest underground. Now understand that object has to be of a certain size before they even go out there and drill it. Because if it's a tiny little object that might have, 5 million barrels of oil in or something, it's not worth drilling. So there's probably a lot of oil out there that's never going to get produced because those objects are just too small. And if you look at the cost and what they have to go through to drill these wells, and you're talking 2,000 to 4,000 meters, 4,000 meters of water depth, and these wells are 8, 9, 10 kilometers deep. So that's a lot of capital is being expended to bring this oil to market.
Dan, can you say how long it takes to drill one of these really deep ones? Let's say you've got 2,000 or 3,000 meters of water and 10 kilometers of rock. How long does that take?
Neighbors set the standard as 60 days. That's the goal they all target. Now, what does it actually take that long? It could take 70 to 80 days, but they all target 60 days. 60 days to do 12 kilometers.
Gosh, seems amazing.
Yep.
So,
and this is just here's the last page of this question, and all this shows is basically the natural gas infrastructure down in Texas, and all the LNG export terminals. The green ones are operational. The yellow ones are the ones we're currently building, and some of the pipelines and stuff. Anyway, questions?
So to summarize, it seems like we have very few major, no major discoveries, 1 to 2 days for a really good one, and then sometimes they're going in blind and they don't even know, but they're dumping billions of dollars on the off chance that there might be something there.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so that's the state of the current oil exploration, folks.
Yeah.
Everyone watching.
Well, I mean, it's hard to talk about this until I actually show you the pictures and the maps and the numbers. But yeah, all the shallow stuff. I mean, LLG is probably the last little guy out there, and now the only guys that go out there and compete in the deep water, those ultra deep wells are the big guys, the Exxons and the Chevrons and British Petroleum. Everybody else just can't gather enough capital to even do this. But understand what this will do. This is going to drive the prices up at the pump. Okay, and you're going to get a situation where right now the super majors probably have enough capital to do this, but as prices go up, I mean, I'm asking the question of Andrew. I mean, can you afford to pay $15 for a gallon of gasoline? And the answer is probably not. And if I can't afford to pay that much for a gallon of gasoline, then these guys are going to have a harder and harder time finding capital to go out there and find these hydrocarbons. So there's plenty of oil out there, is what I'm telling you. The question is, what are you willing to pay for?
Okay. Good.
Another question, Dan.
Sure.
On the takeaways from this, 60, 70 days to drill a well to check for anything there, right?
Yeah.
But now 60 months at minimum to actually get any production out of it?
No, 7 to 10 years. 7 to 10 years. That processing platform I showed you, it takes 7 to 10 years to build all that infrastructure.
And there's no
way to make it faster. It's physically here's what it takes to put all that out there in the middle of the ocean.
Oh, that's serious. Yeah. All right. Well, Roger, I do have the presentation from Jean. Did you want me to share it and then you can tell us about it?
Good question, Andrea. I don't really know. I'm happy to talk. I know roughly what he's got. Are we going to get Jean? I don't know. I know he does come in late sometimes.
I sent him an email as well, and I'm not seeing him here yet. Maybe we could do a rough overview, and Dan knows a lot about this stuff too, so it's good that he's here.
Okay, look, I could do a 5-minute tickety-poo, couldn't
sure.
I? And then let others come on.
Sure. So what are these charts that we're looking at here?
So you would like me to start, Andrew, is that right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, jolly good. Can everybody hear me more or less?
Yeah. Yes.
Nobody can not hear me, is that right? Jolly good. Okay, hard to tell. Right, so Jean is a genius. He's had access to all the important oil data for many years. That is the oil consultancy data, Petro Consultants back in before 2000 with Colin Campbell and others, and did lots of really good studies. This is Jan Laherrere, and with Colin and other people, and about 5 or 6 or 7 all worked on the Petro Consultants reports in 1994 to 1996 on the back of Petro Consultants oil discovery data. And the crucial thing that came out, there was all those reports, they were quite expensive in the end, but the crucial thing that came out that everybody can read is the Scientific American report, March 1998, the end of cheap oil. And that is still a landmark report. If you want to know anything about oil, it's got everything in there, the non-conventionals and the conventionals and so on. They did conclude that, correctly conclude that global conventional oil would reach resource limited peak sometime, I actually forget now exactly, sometime in the first decade of this millennium, the 2000s. So they say global conventional oil will reach resource limited production peak. And as we now know out of the IEA, International Energy Agency, recently, they put that peak date at 2008. So somewhere between 2000 and 2010, 2008. And we say that it's essentially at peak. This is global conventional oil, because you could up to the OPEC stuff. If you invested a lot and removed all the quotas, you could up it a lot, but not for long, only to 2030 or something, and that's with a lot of effort. So Jan Laherrere and Colin Campbell did that landmark report. If you've never looked at Scientific American 1998, you simply have to. It's got everything in there. What everybody forgot, and Andrea and all the rest of you not forgot, that fracking came along faster and quicker than most expected. Jan Laherrere and Colin Campbell said there's huge amounts of non-conventional out there. We all know that. There was, for many years, the Energy Information Administration, the US EIA, did forecast that conventional oil, American conventional oil, would go down, and kerogen oil, like processing kerogen in rock, would go up, and they depended on they forecast the futures with kerogen, and kerogen is out there. There's 1,000 billion barrels, 1,000 gigabarrels of kerogen, much of it in America, and you get oil from coal.
Hey,
yes,
Roger, I'm just hoping if you could just tell us what these charts are that Jean made.
Yes. Very good. Yes, I can, but I still need.
So what are these?
I can tell you all that, but very briefly on the background. So Jean and Colin worked hard with the industry data for this. Unfortunately, the last few years, Jean has not had access to the oil consultancy data on oil discovery. So he's had to use a different approach. He still has the background and the information, but he's had to turn to Hubbert linearization. And Hubbert linearization is a brilliant idea from Hubbert that says if your oil production in a region is following what's called a Hubbert curve, that's I've forgotten now, the brain's gone for a minute, but anyway, the standard curve of production in a region, logistic curve, if you're following a logistic curve for cumulative production, logistic for cumulative, then annual production follows what's called the Hubbert curve, the well 101 that starts at minus affinity goes up to a peak and goes down to minus to zero, plus infinity, so it doesn't have starts and stops. Then if your production in a region is really nicely following that curve, then you do this plot, which is what Jan does, which is cumulative production over annual production over cumulative production on the y-axis against cumulative production on the x-axis. And that very cleverly linearizes that complex Hubbert curve. And here we look at America. So this one that Andrii is nicely showing is lovely set of dots. Every dot is a year. And before light tight fracked oil popped in, we've had ages and ages of American production. Total production, this is not just lower 48 like Hubbert did, this is total production excluding light tight, going in effectively straight times from, you'd have to count back, but that's something like 1980 or something, going down to a total of, I can't actually see it, 200, what's the figure, 200 and something gigabarrels. I'd have to blow it up a bit, but Andrii, what's, oh, very good, there we go, 250. So if you go back, so this is current year, this is 2024, 3, 2, 1, 2019, 18, because that's the COVID thing, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. So this is about 2008. And you go back another 20, 30 years, whatever it is. So ever since here, and indeed right out to sort of 1970, Hubbert linearization has shown you that total US oil, excluding light tight, is 250 billion barrels. And that, of course, is a spiffing number. Hubbert suggested 200 billion for lower 48 without Alaska, without deep of Gulf of Mexico or deep Gulf of Mexico. So 250 is a wonderful number that we've known for 60 years or whatever that period is. But in pops light tight, changes the shape. And now, as Jan says with frustration on this chart, and this is one of the most important, so it's good we're discussing it, as this shows, light tight hasn't yet gone far enough along the Hubbert curve to let you have an accurate prediction. He'd love to have it. It will in a few more years once you go over peak, but we haven't yet gone over peak. So
it's starting to peak here, it looks
you
like.
could make that case, but look before, you know, it went down in whatever that year was.
Oh, yes, that's true. Yeah,
so that's 20, 24, 24, 23, 22, 21, 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15. 2015, she went down and then popped up as better recovery on the light tight came up and so on. So you can use that Hubbert linearization if you haven't got access to the expensive, and it's $100,000 as Andrii forced Jan Laherrere and me encouraged. Let's use the word encourage. Me to write the document. I had loosely said, everybody remember, I'd loosely said that the expensive oil data was the $1 million data sets, and that is indeed what the oil companies were paying every year to the oil consultants is $1 million a year, but the actual data that you need, backdated discovery data, are only $100,000 a year for the license. You can't publish it, you can't reproduce it. But if you haven't got access to the $100,000 data, as Jan no longer has, then you fall back on the wonderful Hubbert linearization. And it's not bad. So now we look at NGLs, natural gas liquids. Again, from quite a few years, it indicated about 60 billion for URR, ultimately recoverable resource. Cumulative production will hit zero. This is the whole linearization at 60. But then US NGLs are in no shot through the roof. And your lovely president, who we all thoroughly admire, is pushing and authorizing LNG. We in Europe are buying it like crazy, as the Englishman on this thing knows. And it's going to be interesting when we've looked at Gulf of Mexico. The lovely president thinks there's endless amounts of natural gas liquids out there, and we're all going to depend on it because we're not depending on Russian gas. Angela Merkel decided we should, but then we decided later we shouldn't depend on Russian gas. So let's depend on American NGLs shipped across the Atlantic in lovely boats. And so you can do that. Now the next one is important. So that's natural. Now this is a very good one. It's an updated chart from Jan Laherrere. So he's looking at all crude oil and natural gas liquids from now out future. And what he does is, you can see, is that, let's go over the first green line. That's important. This is America growing rapidly. This is done from 1850, but the 1920s, American oil use ramped up, and it's what made the lovely cars in America. We used it wonderfully. It's what gave the power that allowed the Second World War to go ahead with. We were really worried about oil, but fortunately Texas and so on came in and let the Westerners go ahead, but lack of oil made Germany not be able to fight its war. And it goes over peak, and that's the peak. Thank you kindly, Andrew. That's the peak that Hubbert correctly forecast. Not shown on this gap graph is Hubbert's type of oil, lower 48 conventional. But then the next little peak is Alaska kicking in. So that's Alaska. And don't forget, Prudhoe Bay is America's biggest single oil field. So Texas is big, but Prudhoe Bay is bigger. And she went down and down and down. And then everybody said, oh boy, we're running out of oil, until light type kicked in. Here it is, almost just a bit after 2000, shot up like crazy. But, and this is important. So not only Jean, this is Jean's forecast based on Jean's estimate of crude, 340 billion barrels total recoverable, the URR, U is URR. But it's backed up. I looked just before I came online, Andrii, at global shift. Go, you okay? His representation says Dan.
Oh, Dan, can you not see it?
No, I don't see it.
What?
Oh, you can follow us along on at the YouTube link if you can't see it.
Understand.
Okay, yeah.
Boy, that's important. Without the presentation, it's hard to understand. I apologize.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, let's finish this. Before I came online, I'm nearly there, Andrew. Before I came online, I did go on the globalshift.co.uk. They do a very detailed, this is Jan Laherrere's forecast based on previous knowledge and simply Hubbert linearization, which only requires production data. Goodness me, talk about simple. You only need to know what's been produced in the past. Global Shift's model is far, far more complicated. It's by field, by project for America, and they also have the same date as Jean shows here for peak global oil production. So they endorse what Jean has from Hubbert linearization from a detailed bottom up, and just the same does the IEA in its recent 2025 report, say that likely US oil production. So as Andrei's been hinting at, and we've looked at Dan Gowin on the Gulf of Mexico, if you want to call it Mexico, Gulf of Mexico, then you know there's stuff out there. There is more to be found. You've got Kerosene, but it does look like our lovely saving grace of light tide ain't going to save us. And she goes down pretty rapidly in the Jan Laherrere plot. If you go to the EIA forecasts, Andrea and Dan, they do have this going down or flat, but they're not nearly as pessimistic, if you want to go. They don't have such a rapid decline as Jean has, and it's going to be fascinating going forward to see whether your country, this is American oil, your country has to face as steep a decline as Jean's forecast has. And it's not so steep. Let me go back to my middle notes. I'm sorry, it's important. And then I'm just about done, Jean. Global Shift has oil peak in 2025, but going down rather slowly. So that's important. Jean has it going down quite fast on that prediction. Global Shift, with its detailed, very complicated bottom-up by field and by project model, has the same peak date for American production, oil production, but going down more slowly. And the EIA, who've always been more optimistic, have, and you have to go on the ASPO of France website, have American oil as flat or going down more slowly still. I think that covers the waterfront mainly. There's a lot more charts, but John goes on to gas, US gas, and I've not looked at gas, so I can't really talk to it. LTO is light tight. Here was a good example. We talked before. This is American light tight, trying to do a Hubbert linearization. Annual production over cumulative production on the y-axis, cumulative production on the x-axis. And you can tell yourself either there's only 40 billion barrels, or 75 or 130, depending on how that linearization looks to you. Can we go back to that one above? There we go there. So if it's 2025, the first, we see 2023, 24, 2 years, points to 75. The previous points pointed out higher, 130. Another 2 or 3 years will give Jan Laherrere and the rest of us pretty accurate decline rates and hence URRs, and be able to improve that model. But I'm reporting 3 models, that is Jan Laherrere's, global shifts, and the IEA's detail model. And you put this together, you could, and light tight, that's that. Yes, that's right. Any more? Do you have one with Hubbert on it? Keep going up a bit, Andrew.
Up this one?
No, keep going up, further up, up. Keep going, yeah, keep going. This is whatever that is. No, this is right at the beginning. I meant going the other way. I mean going through the program.
Okay.
Ambiguous. There we go. Keep going through the program. I won't look at that. That's other people. Stop a minute. This is.
Stop a minute. Okay.
That is. Oh, here we go. Yes, this is what we do want. This is AEO is the EIA, American EIA's forecast. So you can see for total, they do have it going down fairly rapidly in their latest. They didn't before they thoroughly disagreed with Jean and everybody else and said, oh no, American production is going to go up and up and up only 2 years ago. But now they are much more practical. They've got total US production, as you can see, coming down from the 2025. So they agree fundamentally. They do, however, have the light dots. They have light tight going down a bit and then flat. So now we're right into the discussion that you guys have all had, the important one about what will happen to fracking. And they have NGLs, natural gas liquids, going up, not down. So here we have a nice contrast between the American EIA, American Energy Information Administration forecasts out to 2050, isn't it? Out to 2050. The American government says natural gas liquids will go up. Jan Laherrere says no, it's going to go down pretty steeply. The EIA says light tight, the light blue dotted line will go up and down, but then flat. And who knows, with more investment and more money, and the thing you were talking about at the beginning of this talk. But they do agree that if you take total US oil, because conventional and shallow offshore and deep offshore are going down anyway, that they will go down out to 2050, even though light tight will hold you up a bit, and they have NGLs as a bit of a saving grace, and that helps us in cold winters like we are today. We'd love to have your NGLs, please. Dry natural gas, keep going. So that's gas. He does come onto natural gas, Gulf of Mexico. He calls it Mexico. There we go. The details, look at those. You now know basically what you're looking at. You're generally looking at a Hubbert linearization, which is simply past production data linearized in the Hubbert way to give you an estimate of URR. And then, of course, you don't peak at midpoint, but you look at what has been produced. And then you say whatever future has to simply meet the URR. You can't go over the URR, there isn't any more. So Jean has to force his model down quite steeply to meet the URRs that are stated. Is that clear, everybody? Anybody got any questions about Laherrere's methodology?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm just noticing that this has that deep, shallow and deep water, and I don't know if Dan, if that makes any sense to you.
Let's look. Keep going. Let's look. Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Well, I think Roger did a great explanation. I mean, we're basically without really hard data, we're doing we're basically doing a projection what we think we can do. But I think Roger kind of nailed hit the head on the nail, and that is basically goes back to, even though there's hydrocarbons out there, what kind of capital are we going to need to get at this stuff? I mean, it's a lot more than just what's actually there. Do we have the capital and the technological means to actually get at it? And so that's the hard part about predicting any of this, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Right, shall we let's push on while Jean isn't here. Keep going. I'll get close to the end, but you've got the general picture. Each one of these is, here we go, Gulf of Mexico. HL is Hubbert linearization, which says if it was following a logistic curve, then it will give you a nice straight line. It doesn't yet, so you've got a couple of ambiguous, and then Jean takes whatever he thinks is the best bet based on all sorts of other data as well. Don't forget he had access to all the oil industry, $100,000 data sets, and then makes a forecast constrained by the URR. So although, Dan, you're right about costs and investment and all the rest of it, Jean is really saying, well, what is the URR likely? And don't forget exactly what Hubbert did. Hubbert went out. Hubbert for the US, lower 48, not Gulf of Mexico and all the rest of it. He went out and he estimated himself something, no, he did not himself. He got an initial estimate of 150 billion barrels of oil in the lower 48 US. He then went and talked to some very big studies and big Platt and others and got 200. So he said, all right, somewhere between 150 and 200, and that's in 1956. And if you model lower 48, 1956, it peaked at half of that. It peaked at 100 billion barrels. That was the US lower 48 peak. And now Jean's latest number is 220, which is only 10% low. So we're talking 2025, you got only 10% more than you estimated back in 1950. So you've got 75 years of estimate of URR, and they essentially haven't changed. This is now Alaska. Oh, Alaska's interesting. Yes, of course. Alaska goes up, CP, but it's going down. And no decline in 79 was the buzzword when I was in America. No, for Alaska, no decline in 1979. No, they didn't. They stayed flat for 1 year in 1979.
And
so
then
they worked very hard. I mean, they worked that field amazingly.
Yeah.
So wonderful stuff. And it's the biggest field.
I see. So this is the projection here.
And that's the projection on. Keep going. BOEM for Alaska. EIOA. That's right. Now this is brilliant. This is complicated, but look. All these lines, Jean is a hero. All these lines are the American EIA, American Energy Information Administration forecasts for US production. Look at that. So you've got from 1960, is it? Yeah, 1960. You've got the first peak. You've got the second peak with Alaska in 1980 something, 1985. This is green is total actual production. Down it goes, down it goes. What does the US EIA think? Well, down pretty flat, and then totally wrong-footed by light tight oil, as we were. But then look, this is absolutely typical. The forecast made as light tight was shooting up was still forecast for reduction until today. And now we are today. What's the latest one? AEA 2025 black. That's interesting, isn't it? As we said, 2021, the red one at the top was still up and then down. But now the American government's become more pessimistic on US oil production. So the black one at the end, 2025, is peaking in 2030 here, isn't it? 2030, and then down fairly steeply to 2050. Not as steeply as Jean has it. So it's going to be interesting to see Jean's simple modeling is more pessimistic and they're less pessimistic. Jolly good. Alaska minus US.
Yeah, Roger,
this is Hubbert. Brilliant.
Roger, when we're talking about Alaska, one of the bigger issues there's a huge amount of stranded gas up there. But just the sheer fact that they've got all this stranded gas and they can't get a gas pipeline, an LNG facility built up in Alaska, that tells you right there that those fields are in a terminal decline. One of the things I try to explain to people about oil fields, the last thing that passes through the wellhead is natural gas.
Yes.
So if you have any place that starts talking about an LNG export terminal or anything like that, that tells you that those fields are in terminal decline.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Yes, you produce your oil. The gas is a gas cap generally, and as you get to the bottom, you finish squishing out the oil. Up comes the last of the gas. Let me look at that chart. Yes, please. This is Hubbert linearization of total US crude minus Alaska, minus the deep water, Gulf of Mexico, minus light tight. So this is Hubbert close to, it's not exactly, but very close to Hubbert's. And we see it pretty straight. So it did, in fact, forecast lower. It's close to 120, but then she flattened out because, of course, I know we had some ups and downs. And then it looked like it now looks 220 gigabarrels as opposed to Hubbert's. It was Platt. Platt went and all the major oil experts in 1950. He went to all the oil experts in 1950 in the US and said, how much conventional oil, lower 48? And they say they came in at about 200. and now it looks like we might be 10% more, 220.
Yeah, up there, I give different presentations. There's probably some straggler fields up there on the North Slope there in Alaska, but the main deposit there in Purdue Bay, she's way into terminal decline.
Yeah. Thanks, Dan. Brilliant.
And one of the issues, Roger, we talked about up in Alaska, just to bring in some of the the smaller fields that we have up there. You're talking about $25 million a well. It's almost $250 million just to drill 9 wells to even do some production up there. So
thank you, Dan. I'd forgotten that.
Not much there.
Thank you. I've forgotten that. It never was cheap, but still isn't cheap.
Yeah.
Well, before we finish all this, let's have briefly, Dan, your view, Andrii, and anybody else on California oil offshore. California's fighting it legally, as you know. Trump says, drill, baby, drill, and let's go offshore. They're frightened like hell out of seismic earthquakes and then spills and stuff. Dan, what's your view on West Coast of U.S. offshore?
I think it's a political mess. Right now, you have the drillers want to drill in the federal locations off the shore of California, but the state of California is fighting it tooth and nail. So it's a giant political mess. And even if they drill some of that oil offshore and just load the oil onto oil tankers to sell that oil into international markets, you still have to have all the support facilities, port facilities there on land. So it's a political mess. And maybe they'll be able to bring maybe 50 to 100 million barrels of oil to the market, maybe not.
So give that last number again. I was not paying
maybe
enough
50 to 100 million barrels of oil.
50 to 100. 50 come right back to Andrei's original figure of quantities and so on. So yes, that's right. So a substantial amount. I'm frightened about, well, they were frightened about oil spills. They're frightened about triggering earthquakes. That will be that would be awful.
Well, the Trump administration is saying it's an international. It's out of the jurisdiction of the state of California. It's far enough out in the Pacific to where it's the federal government's jurisdiction. But you have to remember that you have all those port facilities, and you have to fly their crews out to the rigs. And the state of California still has that oil company by the cojones. I mean, that's so. I'm not sure what's going to. Now, on top of that, even if they were able to develop 50 to 100 million barrels of oil out of what's there, right? You're not going to be able to do advanced oil field services recovery. So, not really a lot of great prospects there in the state of California.
Brilliant. Okay, Andrii, I'm nearly done. Let's go back to the last. So Jean then looks at gas. I won't comment on it because I haven't. You'll see it's the same methodology, the same approach. Certainly, if you go to globalshift.co.uk, they have gas out at 2040 for the peak. So 2025 now for oil, 2040 for gas peak. So look on that one, globalshift.co.uk on their detailed ones. So there's a lot on gas. What's the one you've now got on the screen, please, Andrii? What's that one?
Hello. Yeah, sorry, I was just away for a bit.
Enlarge up a bit. Can you just enlarge the screen?
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Can we go the one now up the screen? I did say before, but I mean, can we go up? One
down? You mean? Or
no, I do mean up now. I get my knickers in a twist, don't I? But up.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Natural. Okay. So here we go. This was down anyway. The one with the multiple lines on it, not the HLs, but the multiple lines.
Multiple lines.
With lots of colors. Yeah. No. Multiple forecasts. Anyway, this is all not so far. Sorry. Anyway, towards the end. Anyway, so lots of nice pictures. It's well worth going through it. I am supposed to be. I keep promising my wife I will sort the garage. I went down on my knees 8 years ago. Andrii knows this. On my knees to my sweetheart, said, I will sort the garage this year, dear. And every year something comes up. So quite how quickly I get onto helping to edit Jean's paper, but it's a wonderful paper, lots of super graphs, and it just needs some text around it. And Andrii, you correctly encouraged me to give some of that text. Okay, I think I'm done.
All right.
Immediate questions, but I think I'm done, Andrii.
Okay, cool. So I'm just checking here in the YouTube, and there is someone was asking about Dan's mic volume. And then Gulf of Mexico. And then why? So someone's upset about Trump changing the name, and why? And then okay, so why does gas come out of the well last? Is it a cost issue or physical issue with how the oil gas is in the ground?
But whether there's oil, there's gas mixed in with the oil. Usually, the gas collects at the top of the deposit. They leave the gas in the deposit and use that to push the oil to the surface. So once you've drained out all the oil, all that's left in there is asphalt and natural gas.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So you usually have two drivers, an ordinary classic trapped well, doesn't apply to fracking, that's a different kettle of fish, but trapped well. There's water below, there's usually gas, or hopefully often gas above. The water's a pusher and the gas is a pusher. So you put your well into the oil and the water pushes from the bottom, the gas pushes from the top. And indeed, with Gowin, the world's biggest field, somebody predicted, I think they were wrong, but they said, well, when the gases come to the bottom and the waters come to the top and they meet each other, there's no oil left, the oil field shuts down. That doesn't take into the fact that Gowin is a huge field with ups and downs and bumps and bits and pieces. But in principle, you take the simplest model of an oil field, water below, then oil because it's lighter, then gas because it's lighter still. You drill into the oil, the water pushes the gas out, and the gas pushes, and you might have to add gas to the top to keep pushing. So you add gas from outside sometimes to keep pushing. And when finally the oil's all come out of your nice flat thing, which never is, it's not homogeneous, but if it came out flatly, suddenly the water would meet the gas, and all you got, as Dan says, then you produce the gas.
Right. If you go out to an oil field out there where they have pumper jacks, what actually comes out of the ground is a mixture of water and hydrocarbons. And they take the water and hydrocarbons, put it in a big separatory tank, and they separate out the oil and the gas. A lot of the gas they inject back down in the field, like what Roger said, to maintain production. The water has salt dissolved into it, and they inject the water back down into the formation. But the last thing that comes out of that well, and I've been out there with the tanks, you'll look inside the tank, it's the water comes up, there's gas dissolved in the water, just no oil. So the last thing that comes to the wellhead is natural gas.
Hey, Jean.
Hello, sorry, I completely forgotten the.
Okay, well, we just finished going through your slides, but we could go through them again because we didn't get to all of them. But we were going to answer a YouTube question, and then I was going to do my presentation, and then maybe we'll get back to your slide, or I don't know. Well, were there some slides you wanted to get to? Now. It's just kind of the schedule is now that I'm going to do my presentation. Is that all right, John? Or
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
It's all right.
Sorry.
So Jean, just to say, Jean, I was asked to, and I took the liberty. I ran through your presentation, generally explained hubbert linearization, the splendid job you've done, and I didn't do much on gas because I know less about gas, but I took them through the oil. So I think they've had a pretty good of your wonderful, wonderful presentation.
Mm-hmm. So I just have questions from the YouTube about the Winston again. And so I'll just put up the numbers here. And as you can see, they have about 12 to 15 billion barrels remaining. About 5 billion barrels have produced or ultimately recoverable. And so 7 to 10 billions remain unproduced at $500 million a year. So multiple decades of output, but it'll gradually worse rock and higher cost as time goes on. So as another YouTube viewer mentioned, it depends on how old you are if it's going to last for your whole lifetime or not. So, okay.
Well, the key words there is poorer rock and higher cost.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that at what point the financiers, the banker says, I'm not financing it. I mean, that's the real limitation.
Mm-hmm.
There may be hydrocarbons there, but you just don't have enough money to get at it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the price of oil is too low.
Yep, like right now.
Yeah, and at least from my analysis, the reason that it's low, historically, the price of oil depends on the money supply, basically how much money people have to spend on oil. During the quantitative easing, the price of oil was very high because there was a large amount of money to spend on oil.
What's happening right now? Wall Street has this narrative that there's this glut of oil, something like 4 to 5 million barrels a day, and they're basically pointing fingers at OPEC. OPEC here recently has come out and corrected Wall Street, saying there is no glut. They have maybe 1 or 2 players there in OPEC that can actually produce maybe an extra 500,000 to 1 million barrels a day. There is no 4 million barrel a day glut. So, and I've said this in shows I've done with General Osterman, showing basically the amount of oil in storage in the United States and the SPR and in storage around the entire planet. We're at the lowest storage levels for oil, diesel, and gasoline for about everywhere on the planet. So there is no glut of oil. It's just a Wall Street narrative that somehow makes the bankers happy. So I'm not sure. Not quite sure I understand the politics of this, but that's really what's going on. Those of us bringing the energy to the market have a different story than what the bankers are telling us about.
All right, thank you. And so I'll just try to do my presentation as quickly as I can now here. So we often talk about fuels like oil and gas, but what really matters is what they make possible: food on the plate, warm homes, and land people can live on. Here we'll look at some hard numbers on food, land, energy, descent, then explore how communities can respond so neighbors stay fed and warm without turning on each other. The resource valley ahead is real, but how we walk into it, in fear or in kindness, is still up to us. I'll start where we are now: food insecurity, land and household budgets in Canada. Then we'll look at the energy story, the valley of declining oil, and what that means for prices. After that, I'll show 2 broad paths for towns: business as usual versus a planned, compassionate descent. Finally, we'll talk about practical steps: hamlets, land access, local energy, and what you can do where you live. Canada is still called a first world country, yet recent data shows just over 1 in 4 people living in food insecure households, about 10 million neighbors, and including 2.5 million children. In 2024, National Tracking Food found that most Canadians report some form of food-related financial pressure, and many have already skipped or shrunk meals because they could not afford groceries. Groceries that used to be a bit pricey now reshape household budgets. Fuel, rent, and mortgages leave less room for food each month. They're not random problems. These are physical signs of tighter energy, land, and supply chains. Underneath every number is a person with a divine spark, someone being quietly squeezed, who deserves land, warmth, and enough food to live with dignity. Food insecurity is rising by about 4 percentage points per year. Land concentration is rising at 2% per year. Food bank use is at record levels. In 2024 alone, of March, there were 2.1 million visits to food banks across Canada, more than double that level since 2019. These aren't abstract curves. They represent real people eating less and losing access to land. If we let those trends continue, we get more people skipping meals, more families priced off land, and more pressure on local services and frontline staff. Our task as a community is to respond with care, foresight, and practical planning rooted in compassion. Jan Laherrere and others show global liquids near a broad peak. The exact year is less important than the shape. From here, physics guarantees more down than up in total oil available. Even modest production declines have produced big price spikes. Households feel this first at the pump and in the grocery aisle. Every major energy shock in history has shown up as a food shock. For the majority, safe shelter and land for subsistence are drifting out of reach. Land and energy prices reinforce each other. Long car commutes become a luxury. Yet every person, as a bearer of the divine, is worthy of enough land to meet basic needs with dignity. Canada-only data from 2008 to 2024 with 3 simple projection fits. Blue line, what already happened. from 10% food insecure in 2008 to over 25% in 2024. The red line is the gentle case, a straight trending reach, 33% by 2040. But it's quite unrealistic. Yellow-green curves. If recent acceleration continues, we approach half of households, and in the worst fit, most Canadians are food insecure by the mid-2030s. These aren't predictions, these are warning signals. On our current path, we move from stress into crisis within 1 to 2 council terms. The ladder that follows isn't distant or abstract. It's a plausible near-term Canadian trajectory unless we change course. Here, the ladder is defined by food insecurity, not by official spending shares. Stress stage, about 20 to 35% of households are food insecure in a typical year right now in Canada. It started in 2023 and may extend until 2029, based on these projections. Stores still look normal, but many families are cutting back on fresh food, skipping or shrinking meals, juggling bills so kids can eat first. Canada also has already crossed into this band. More than 1 in 4 live in food insecure household. At this level, people are squeezed, but still strong enough to organize, protest, and push for change. It is a warning light. Crisis stage, 35. So in the 2030 to 2036 range, according to the quadratic projection, 35 to 60% of households are food insecure. On the current trends, food anxiety becomes normal. Many families have no slack for rent, heat, or medicine, fall behind on bills, health needs, and see children struggle with hunger or frequent moves. Historically, this level triggers major upheavals, grain riots before the French Revolution, food price shocks in the Arab Springs. People are hungry, but still strong enough to march, strike, and demand change. Policy and compassion here decides whether we stabilize or slide toward famine. And then the famine stage, which is, if trends continue, will be 2036 to 2040 plus. And famine stage, over 60% of households are food insecure, many severely. Markets may have food, but prices and shortages put it out of reach for most. Historically, this looks like mass immigration and refugee flows, visible wasting and disease, families selling tools, land, or heirlooms to eat a little. Examples include the Irish famine, Bengal in the 1940s, and Ethiopia in the 1980s. At this point, markets and governments fail. Survival relies on aid, networks, or leaving. How far we climb is a moral choice. Land access, fair distribution, people before profit. Think of the oil age as a high hill leading into a long valley. The valley, a world of less energy per person, is unavoidable. What is not fixed is how we walk into it, live in it, and climb out on the far side. One path is fear, hoarding, and exclusion. Another path is forgiveness, love, kindness, and compassion, recognizing the divine in everyone. The same resource curve can feel like collapse or like a kinder ruralization. The physical layer is not optional. Less oil, more expensive transport, inputs, and long supply chains, tighter energy, higher baseline costs for food and heat. But the social and spiritual layer are our choice. Hoarding, blame, and exclusion leads to violent, chaotic dissent. But sharing, land access, and mercy gives us stable, modest, humane lives. Recognizing the divine in one another makes land and calories a shared responsibility, not a zero-sum fight. The valley is set by physics. The quality of life in that valley is set by how much we raise love and kindness. 4 ways society organize ownership and decision-making. Neoliberal plutocracy. Wealth and land concentrate. Markets and lobbyists steer policy. Technocratic collectivism. State or party owns most assets. Experts and algorithms direct distribution. Mercantilism or globalism. Export firms and investors dominate priorities. Governments favor trade over local needs. And distributism or decentralization. Land and tools are spread widely. Local families, co-ops, and towns decide. Oil descent will stress each model differently. So by neoliberalism or plutocracy here, I mean the current default in North America, policy built around investor returns with politics serving capital first and people second. Land is treated mainly as an asset class, not as a basic human right or a shared trust. In an energy and food descent, this mode tends to concentrate land and ownership even more, drive sharp spikes in rents and food prices, treat human beings according to economic utility. In the very dark version of this, those seen as having no utility are quietly discarded, warehoused, enslaved in various ways, like through prisons, or left to die through euthanasia. This is the logical end of valuing people only as units of production or consumption. By socialism or technocratic collectivism, I mean systems where a central authority plans production and distribution. Ministries, expert panels, algorithms. Land and food are managed through plans, quotas, permit systems, and digital controls, such as smart meters or ration cards. In dissent, this can provide basic calories for those close to the center or those who comply. But squeeze-free choice, local initiative, and small-scale experimentation make communities dependent on distant approvals rather than their own judgment. It is possible to avoid famine under this mode, but often at the cost of heavy control and low trust. This is basically the China model. Mercantilism or globalism. Nations compete for investment, exports, and trade balance outrank local needs. In practice, a small investor official in-group sets priorities. Politicians reassure the circle rather than serve ordinary people. Land and resources are extracted for export first. In dissent, governments protect export flows and debt payments. Local hunger becomes an unfortunate necessity. Rural areas turn into sacrifice zones feeding distant markets. Mark Carney, Prime Minister of Canada, is a perfect example of this. He even describes himself as a globalist, and most of his actions help his investment company Brookfield while bleeding Canada and its people. Distributism starts from a different axiom. Every person is worthy of enough land, tools, and local enterprise to meet basic needs with dignity. Land, tools, and small businesses are spread widely rather than concentrated in a few hands, public or private. In dissent, this means more households can grow at least part of their food. More homes can secure modest heat from local wood, biogas, or district systems. Neighbors are positioned to support one another rather than compete for crumbs. The idea is not fantasy abundance, but a modest, stable life where power and property are shared enough that compassion has room to act. Distributism starts with a simple idea. People thrive when they have secure access to land, tools, and local work. Property widely held means practical pathways, community land trusts, homesteads and small farms, stable long-term leases. Local production means rebuilding everyday capacity, mills, cold rooms, workshops, makerspaces, greenhouses, nurseries, and seed networks, community colleges teaching foods and trades. Decisions close to home is subsidiarity, households, hamlets, villages, neighborhoods, towns. Under energy's descent, resilience grows fastest when land, tools, and decisions stay local. Energy descent does not give one single outcome. The invitation is to move as far as possible toward the bottom right, food forest communities rooted in mutual care. You may know this one from previous slides. Driving forces, tightening fuels. If we leave business as usual, the driving forces are tightening fuels and unstable prices, rising food insecurity, rising land concentration, long supply lines with minimal local stockpiles. The likely outcomes by the 2030s, if nothing changes, expanding ration-style programs without real resilience, multi-week staple shortages with every logistic shocks, municipal staff asked to manage failure rooted in global systems. Same valley, but walked in fear and scarcity with the most vulnerable suffering first. Same physics, different heart, and different tools if we have a planned descent, building local stocks, 30, then 60, then 90 days of staples, critical meds, water treatment, shortened supply lines, mills, cold rooms, small depots, fuel corridors for planting and harvest. Open new land pathways, community land trusts, hamlets, village zoning. Track it all with a simple public dashboard. Local systems mean fewer shocks from distant crises and more room for compassion to act quickly. This is what love looks like in policy, planning the valley crossing so everyone can eat and stay warm. Food and fuel infrastructure. Three levers every town controls: food and fuel infrastructure, local mills, cold rooms, small depots, and a planting season fuel corridor. Land access rules, community land trusts, homestead zoning, transparent allocation. Treat land as a shared trust so each person can meet basic needs. And transparency and trust. A quarterly food and fuel dashboard, stocks, hectares, fuel status, service levels. Honest numbers are an act of respect. Everyone can see what is real. The gifts of a local life. Localized systems are not just emergency measures. They have real upsides, less exposed to wars, sanctions, and distant conflict zones, less vulnerable to global shipping in just-in-time failures, more daily contact with neighbors, more chances to help and be helped. A life with less fossil fuels can help more time can hold more time in gardens, kitchens, more children playing near home, more chances to practice kindness in person. The same descent that shrinks our energy can deepen our humanity. A practical target, about 1 to 1.2 hectares per person for food, perennials, wood, heat, and buffers. This is one way of saying, in numbers, every person is worthy of enough land to meet their needs. It would be different in different areas depending on their climate. 60-hectare hamlets and a 400, so this is an example, 420-hectare village center surrounded by agriculture. So you got like 7 hamlets here. A pattern that lets many households hold lands, grow food, and stay connected to town. The post-oil world turns on less total energy, roughly 1/10 to 1/20 of current levels, with thoughtful design and shared care that can still support warm homes, full plates, and a rich culture. So here's kind of building while it's optional, 2026 to 2029. These are the years to prepare when it's still optional, before price stocks force our hand. Foundations to lay now, right to grow, urban homes, hamlet zoning, and CLT launch. A 30-day city stockpile, along with the first mill and 2 cold rooms. Training programs for low-income urban residents to transition to rural plots, grow food, and sell surplus into local markets. We can also begin small subsidiary pilots like the Black Swallowtail Butterfly Flyway. These projects lift morale, build local stewardship, and support beneficial insects for home gardeners. These years are about learning the skills and building the systems that will carry us through the descent. By 2030 to 2034, the descent becomes visible. Higher fuel costs, tighter fuel supply chains, and more households under strain. Local systems need scale. Can someone unmuted? Okay. 4 to 8 cold rooms and 6 to 12 depots across the county. Biogas and chip heat pilots that cut diesel 30 to 60%. This is also when we may need to lay short rail lines between municipalities, especially if gasoline passes $3 a liter or road maintenance becomes unaffordable. Rail keeps communities connected when cars and asphalt falter. Expect multi-week shortages, clinics needing fallback heat, and councils realizing they must rely on each other, not distant systems. These years test whether we've built enough trust, stockpiles, and skills to stay calm under pressure. By 2035 to 2040, local systems mature enough into steady operation. A 1 to hectare per person across the region, coppice, perennials, and food forests established, diesel kept for harvest and emergencies. Life becomes more local, more food near home, more neighbors contact, fewer trucks, more gardens and workshops. We also need awareness. Other regions may decline faster, bringing refugee waves or occasional banditry. Compassionate refugee programs and strong subsidiarity helps us stay humane without losing safety. Calm communication and steady leadership can diffuse conflict before it turns violent. These years show what stable community-centered life can look like under low energy. Subsidiarity in practice. Start with family, build up through block, hamlet, village, town, county. Decisions are made as close as possible to the people affected. Each level selects leaders who represent them up one level. Higher levels serve the lower with support, data, coordination, not control. This honors both free will and responsibility. Each person is seen, not treated as a statistic. Local AI means models running in the county or region, keeping skills and knowledge close to home. In a makerspace, AI can guide repairs, help design parts for CNC and 3D printers, and train new welders, machinists, and growers. AI can help regions build vertical integration, linking local materials, workshops, growers, and fabricators into a coherent system. The Great Lakes Basin already holds water, minerals, and transport routes. AI helps communities map and use these wisely. AI is an enabler. It helps people keep technology running, pass on skills, and rebuild local industry through descent. Regardless of the physical terrain, we can have a good future if we stay centered. Keep a clear head, modulate your breathing, stay calm. In the hard moments asked, where is the love in this moment? Trust that all is well and all will be well, even through difficulty. Let angels, guides, or helping spirits support you in whatever language you use. Listen for the still small voice within, guiding you toward the good life. More important than doing is being. Be that light, that love, that kindness, that one who cares. Trust that we will get through this together by loving one another and being kind. It is okay to forgive and to share. Generosity is a form of courage. See even those working against the good life as frightened children who need care. And what you can do as a household. As a household, learn basic food production. Even a few beds or containers help. Support local growers or markets so they survive the harder years. Reduce energy demand. Insulate. Dress for the weather. Simplify transport. Practice daily gratitude. It's an arch nemesis of despair and cruelty. As a neighbor, you can share tools, skills, and seeds. Start or support a tiny shared pantry. Check in on elders, single parents, or anyone living alone. Talk gently with friends and relatives about land, heat, and food as shared responsibilities, not private failures. As a citizen, attend local municipal and county meetings when you can. Simply being in the room changes the tone. Speak to counselors and staff about increasing compassion, love, and kindness in land and food policy. Ask for public dashboards, community land trusts, homestead options, and resilient zoning as normal parts of local planning. Be willing to step forward yourself, serve on committees, advisory boards, or even run for local office when you feel called. If you're watching this online, you can pause here and reflect. What is one concrete thing you can do where you live? Who is one neighbor or counselor you can talk to? What would it look like to bring more love and kindness into your local politics? For live audiences, questions about the data and the timelines, stories from your town about food, land, or fuel, and ideas how you or your council can move toward planned descent. And so this quote speaks to the value of small-scale decision-making, places where people know one another and can choose together with care. We shape little circles of influence, even when the wider world feels very large. Every person carries an inner light. When we meet each other with kindness, trust grows and communities steady themselves. Energy descent is a shared value, yet the quality of that value comes from love, forgiveness, courage, and compassion. If this touched you, share it with the neighbors, council, families. Good futures grow from many small hearts aligned. May you and all beings be fed, warmed, sheltered, and supported in service. All right. So, any questions? Hello? I see there's a lot of comments, but did you guys want to unmute yourselves? Okay. Hello? Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Roger, you can unmute. Oh, no, you gotta unmute yourself first, Roger.
Sorry. Thank you. Yes, I thought I had. Sorry. An excellent presentation, Andrea. I hope it doesn't go quite that far, that fast, that bad, but completely correct on principles. Just two quick things. An anecdote. I'm born 45. Some of others on here are older, Jean, and others. We had rationing, of course, during the war, and which will possibly have to come in. And we had chickens down the garden because the government ration was one fresh egg per week per family member. One fresh egg per week per family member.
Wow.
The important point I want to make is we all learned, very interestingly, what the things we have to do and did them well, Andrew, which gives me encouragement. During COVID, we all did stay at home, didn't go out with the kids, walked on the other side of the street, and all by and large went through extraordinary things because we could see the neighbor there. So where you come in and you're right is we and the other people on this group, especially Gowin and all the rest of it, have to explain that if there are these pressures, like more people, food banks and stuff, to get to the bottom of the underlying drivers and get the governments and people to understand that and not just go down the dark route you correctly painted, which is so easy to go down, blame the government, protest out in the streets. So if there are fundamental things happening, a key thing, we know we can change, we can handle them well, as you described, but a key thing is getting the fundamentals understood within society. There we go. That's all my 2 pennies worth.
Okay, thank you. So I see that there's also Barbara. Go ahead.
Have you looked at in more detail at the land hoarding? I don't know what it looks like in Canada. I'm in the northern central U.S. and it's appalling.
Yeah.
It really is. People your age couldn't possibly start small farms because it's just not available. Bill Gates has bought a bunch of it, for example.
Yeah, I have looked into it and the history of it. And what's interesting is that just after World War II, there was this large push to do land distribution to help everyone get land. And especially in Japan, everyone got land. Taiwan, everyone got land. But then during the late 1960s to early 1970s, Mao decided to also, he's like, it's working for everybody else. I'm going to try giving people land too. But then he forced everybody to burn all their trees, and there was a massive famine. And then also there was the McCarthy era. And during the McCarthy era, they said, oh, letting people have land is communism. And so distributism, or letting people have land, became less popular. And they said that instead that we should consolidate land, that we should give all the land to very, very rich people and let the very rich people take care of all the land on our behalf, and that then they'll take care of us. And then so basically since the 1970s, we started to get what were called real estate investment trusts. But actually it was kind of, there were pension funds at first, and then it was really in the 1990s that they really started to get going. And then by the 2000s, they were huge, and they were just gobbling everything up. And now they own 30% of Canada, of the private land in Canada. And basically the amount of private land available for human beings declines 2 to 4% every single year.
In the U.S., there was another factor in the 60s and 70s, and that is the technological changes in agriculture. So when my father was a farmer in the 50s and 60s, one person in the community had a huge combine, and they literally went farm to farm because nobody could afford their own. And as equipment got larger and more expensive, and the federal government in the U.S. encouraged people to buy their own versus do the old-fashioned communities, which you're trying to restore, it got too expensive for a small farmer. And so farms consolidated because you couldn't afford to buy a $500,000 piece of equipment if you only had 300 acres. Yep. You needed 1,000 in this area.
And you're right in terms of that was definitely a factor, but it was also the government was very, very much pushing this consolidation.
Yes.
But Barbara, here in the United States, we have four companies that control seeds and fertilizer in the United States, and that's been responsible for a lot of the consolidation of farmland. There's a huge rebellion sort of going on right now because Tyson Foods is shutting down processing centers and bankrupting ranchers at the same time. There's a shortage of beef. So here in the United States, we have antitrust problems.
We do. They're not.
Washington D.C. aren't doing their job.
They're not enforced.
Yeah.
And if you guys haven't read the book Barons by Austin Frerick, you need to grab a copy this afternoon and start reading. It's much worse than you're thinking in terms of.
Well, I know, like, one of the things they did is usually, for example, butchers used to be licensed at the state level. They've made it so you can't have an own butcher shop. They've made it so only the giant processors can butcher meat, for example, like the big Tyson guys. At the same time, we have all these E. coli outbreaks, and and meats being pulled from the supermarket. And the reason why is because we don't have local butchers, because they've pretty much regulated them out of existence, and that's contributed to this whole thing. But it goes back to those big four companies that control all the seed and the fertilizer and the processing plants.
And none of my Amish neighbors have ever had an E. coli breakout.
No, they don't. They seem to have.
But they're not allowed to sell whole milk in Wisconsin because
they tried to make it against the law to buy Amish milk here in Indiana. We had a big pushback, because a lot of us buy milk from the Amish farms because we don't like the processed milk in the supermarket. But yeah,
you guys have more freedom than us in Canada. We're not allowed to buy milk.
yeah. A lot of places, because we're able to push back at the state level, at the local level.
But in Wisconsin, we're not either. It is very difficult for me to buy whole milk from Amish farmers.
Yeah.
There's ways around it, but in some states, people have been caught and jailed for doing it.
Yeah. I know. They like to say how it's easier to get heroin than raw milk in North America.
There's a lot of truth to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I have the here. This was kind of like the neoliberal plutocracy. This was kind of a Reaganomics. And so it was the idea that neoliberalism is that we should give complete and total freedom to the rich to amass as much wealth as they want. And so this is kind of see, everyone's got a barcode on them, and it's the main thing. Okay, John, you had your hand up for a while. Go ahead.
A little bit of micro optimism over here in the UK. I've put a link in the chat. I just nipped down to London and we had the national emergency briefing. So this was 650 climate scientists, a couple of hundred journalists and politicians were there to listen to a panel of 9 experts on climate change. So the idea is to make a COVID-style emergency expert panel. So that's the good news. The bad news is, or the amusing news, is that peak oil was not on the agenda. This was primarily climate change, biodiversity loss, and some other things, but peak oil didn't get mentioned on there. So there are these different levels of awareness. Anyway, if you want to know more about that, just get in touch with me or nip onto that website. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Okay, I see Roger has his hand up, and I know Laura had a lot to ask, so you'll be next, I guess. Roger, go ahead.
Thank you. Andrea, I'm awfully sorry. For various reasons, I've got to leave this extraordinarily important talk. Jean, I'm very pleased. I'll be in contact with you on the oil paper and make some suggestions. That's much appreciated. So that's one. Andrea, I really appreciate your presentation, and huge amounts of lessons in there simply have to come across. And if it's all done right, and coming back to what Jonathan just said, and the governments know what's going on and understand it, and that's partly up to us academics, to the Dan Gowins of the world, to make the point and make it clear. But if we do, then we can have COVID-19 type cooperation and clever steps and follow the sort of footsteps you've said. But if we can't get across, then it's a tougher thing. Anyway, look, lovely to see you all. I've got to go this time. Look forward to future contributions. Mm-hmm. And Jean, many thanks for all your wonderful stuff.
Yep, thanks for joining.
Thank you, Roger, for all your hard work, sir.
Cheers. All the best.
Yeah, Jonathan, I wouldn't worry about this energy thing. Next year, California is going to be in the middle of a major energy crisis, and it'll get worse from there on out, just because we're not investing enough in production. So eventually, if you don't invest enough in energy infrastructure, it comes back to bite you. And oil is an ever depleting asset. It's just the way it is.
Laura, did you want to unmute and ask some of you the questions you put in the chat here? Because there's too many for me to get to all at once. Okay, maybe Laura's not here. Okay, so there's some in the YouTube, but I'm wondering about Jean, if there were some slides you wanted to share from your presentation that we didn't get to here. I have it open over here. Just while we still have you. Okay. Here, I'll just bring it up to the top here. Oh, Jean, are you unmuted? We might have to. You might have to unmute. You're muted right now. You have to press the button. Yeah, I can't hear you because you have to unmute your microphone. Sorry, Jean. Yeah, it should be. If you move your mouse. Oh. Oh. Okay, we lost Jean. Okay. All right. Well, hopefully he'll be back in a minute. Okay, there's a few YouTube questions here, or a bunch actually. Gas comes out of the well last. Okay, depends on how old you are. Price of oil. How much of those full shelves don't have food on them? So I'm not sure what that means, but we still have full shelves in our grocery stores. It's just a lot of people can't afford them. Wheat can be especially cost effective. Yeah, if you buy it in bulk. Okay. Ivor, go ahead.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now. Yeah, I really like your idea of the village, Andrii.
Okay.
The village is sort of I think that's sort of one of the oldest ways that people have lived, and one of the best ways for people to live. Unfortunately, I think there's giant corporations, like our country has a lot of giant corporations. Well, so does yours. And they're kind of, they're calling the shots right now, and they don't really want us living in villages. In fact, they spent the last 200 years pushing us out of the villages and into their projects, their corporations.
Yes, you're right. And it's been more than 200 years. It's actually from the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, the beginning of coal. And then what happened is that they actually had wheelhouses in the cities, and these wheelhouses would basically, you'd have a wheel and it would spin, and then you could attach things to the spinning wheel to do things. And one of the things that they were doing was they were making wool thread, and this was very profitable. And so they managed to bribe enough politicians. Hey, Jean, how are you doing?
Oh, I am lost you.
Okay, yeah, we can hear you now. Very good, very good.
Okay, what I'm saying that I'm rewriting my paper.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm changing my book on English in good American, thanks to Charlie. So anyway, I have, my problem is, you see, I trust only data. And up to now, the EIA data was poor, but I was glad that on the Gulf of Mexico, it was good data, but I realized that the Gulf of Mexico data is now rotten, because they report good data up to 2020, and since it is just nothing. So I'm completely lost on US data, and I don't know how to. So my paper, I'm adding more thing, and it will be finished in a few days, but it's not yet finished. You will find more graph and more problem.
Okay, so you wanted to kind of do your presentation next time.
Yes,
Yes.
because it's not finished, and
Okay.
the problem is as long I'm not good at I'm lost.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your hard work, Jean. Well, we reviewed at least what you had so far, and it looks quite like there's a lot of graphs, and it's very intricate. And Roger explained a bunch of them to us. Mhm. So, okay. And so what I was saying about the wheelhouses was that these wheelhouse capitalists then managed to bribe the politicians to force the peasants off the land, so that they could have more sheep to have more wool for their wheelhouses. And then you had people that were just wandering around because they had nothing to do. And so, but these wheelhouses needed people to work in their factories. And so the government made it illegal for you not to have a home after kicking the peasants out of their homes. And so they were forced to go to work in these factories. And then basically the same pattern has been playing out, because, say, for instance, Stalin and Lenin, they read about England, and they're like, look, England, they did such a great job of industrializing, because they were an industrial nation. And it's like, we're going to do the same thing that England did, but instead of doing it over 100 years of enclosure acts, we're going to do it in 10 years by forcibly taking the peasants and then putting them into the cities. And like you had like 30 people in one apartment building, and things like that. And we're basically kind of living in a continuation of that in many respects. And Jean brought up a good point that basically BOEM, like a lot of these oil companies are no longer producing the discovery data, because, like Dan was showing, the discoveries are not worth reporting on. They're so small that they would rather not.
If you're an oil company that's drilling a bunch of dry holes, you don't report that.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not good advertising to attract investors.
Yeah.
Simple. Yeah.
Exactly. And so because they're discovering so little, and I think, like Jonathan's point earlier, he was talking about how they're not talking about peak oil, they're just talking about climate change. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that climate change is this kind of it's part of that meritocratic thing where they've got their buddies here. I'll just
well, also, Andrew, think
Yeah,
about
go
this
ahead.
way: if they can convince people of climate change, convince them to consume less hydrocarbons, therefore it extends the supply of fossil fuels. I mean,
Yes.
It makes sense if you think about it.
Yes.
That's rather than talk about peak oil, they talk about, oh, we're damaging the climate. That's how they entice people to basically use less fossil fuels.
Mhm.
Try to extend the supplies. That has to do with power.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're changing the narrative from this is what's going to happen because of physical reality to we should do this because we're so moral and upright.
Right.
Go ahead, Ivor.
Yeah, I'm a believer in both peak oil and climate change. And I think climate change is going to be a big problem. I don't think our individual actions are definitely make sense nowadays. Like, we use half the fossil fuels we used to, and we live just as well. And I think almost everybody could figure out a way to use less fossil fuel, but there's just no incentive so far in our culture to do that. And it makes sense from many ways to figure out ways of using less fossil fuels. I don't think it's a plot. I think it's reality.
One of the things I believe in, Ivor, this goes back to my company and the geothermal and the hydrogen stuff, is if we can not use fossil fuels for transportation fuel. I mean, for example, the laptops and the plastics and the drugs that Eli Lilly, I think those things are much more valuable. And if we can find a substitute for transportation fuel, figure out a better way of not using, the fossil fuels for doing that. We can use those things for other things. We need to recycle more plastics and and things like that, and not just burn the fossil fuels and emit it to the atmosphere. It's
Yeah,
kind
I
of what
agree with you completely on that. Because it just seems to me like, what is it? Somebody calls it shopping fuel.
Yeah.
Gasoline is shopping fuel, and our big problem is going to be diesel, and our big problem is going to be diesel pretty soon. I've heard that we're not going to be getting, unless we start a war or something, we're not going to be getting this.
And the reason why is
crude
because
from
we
Venezuela.
can't find those heavy crudes for making the diesel, the long molecules. There's a lot of natural gas liquids, a lot of short molecules, but the heavy stuff we need for making diesel is in short supply.
Yeah, and I mean, we kind of need it. And I noticed that, gas is getting cheap in the U.S. It's under $3, but diesel hasn't moved. Diesel's almost $4.
Yep, and it's only getting worse too.
Right.
Well, I don't know what we're going to do, but we are going to probably drown in a sea of cheap gas. Sort of crazy.
Because of all the NGLs, right?
Yeah.
Well, remember
So
what I
that's
said,
probably
guys, that when it comes to an oil field, the last thing that passes through the wellhead is natural gas.
Right, exactly.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And then you can use that with NGLs to make the light fuels like gasoline.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But it also tells you that's where we are in that fossil fuel curve. We're going into that decline, and the economy is going to get a lot harder to make it work. That globalized economic system becomes a lot harder to make it work. So,
and I have a YouTube question here talking about EROI. So they were saying 18-1 necessary for 21st century lifestyle with fridges, hospitals, packing materials, like calculated by Laherrère. I thought it was Charles Hall. I don't know if Jean also made calculation, but I believe the calculation was 11, and they were asking what would be the EROI for say a distributist kind of lifestyle. And well, the point is that since it's not dependent on fossil fuels, and then you actually have lumber, wood, and coppices, and the EROI of firewood is 30. So you can actually have your very high EROI using coppice wood. You just don't have nearly as much fuel. It's still a 10 to 20 times less, but you have enough in order to have the good life. Okay, Jean, you've had your hand up for a while. Go ahead.
Okay, about climate change. You see, the theory of IPCC is that the CO2 control the temperature, but it's the contrary, because if you go to the site of Climate for You by Ole Holum, Danish climatologist, it is obvious that temperature is controlling CO2. So when everybody knows when you rise the temperature of the ocean, the CO2 come into the atmosphere. So all the theory on climate change are wrong if you use this hypothesis. But if you believe in fact, go to climate change, and you see that the problem is the temperature is increasing, not because of CO2, but increasing because of solar activity and a few things. But and very hard to predict what will be in the future. So let's go back to fact and not to theory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, John. Yeah, I hear you. And I know my personal perspective is that whether or not it has an effect, like Rystad's estimate that even if we manage to discover another 1 trillion barrels, which is what we would have to discover in order to meet the SEC 1P predictions, then we still wouldn't produce enough CO2 for the bad climate change goals. So I see kind of like that as a red herring. Climate change is a red herring. It's kind of like, yes, maybe it is warmer one way or another. It is warmer than it was before, but the important thing is that we're running out of fuel at a pace that long before climate change has time to affect us, resource limits will affect us. Like Charles Hall, he's got that, the graph where it's the person on the thing on the beach, and there's a little wave that says climate change, but then there's a huge wave that says resource depletion. And resource depletion is really what's gonna, what's getting everybody, whereas the climate change doesn't seem to be having as big effect. Go ahead, Ivor.
Look, it could be that I live in New England, and New England is apparently 3 times faster, heating up 3 times faster than the rest of the world, believe it or not. It's one of the fastest places on Earth. I used to own a wharf, and sea level rise came up and took it away. And I was stuck in a flood situation here in Skowhegan, Maine, and we were out of electricity for like 3 days. No, all the roads were closed. They were flooded out. So all we had to do was go down and watch the flood with everybody else. It was kind of amusing. But so I don't see it as an abstract thing. I see it as something that is happening now. And I've already experienced a few things that I've already experienced it. And I think a lot of people, especially in the United States, are beginning to experience it a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, to that effect, Ivor, like kind of peak oil is a hopeful message that we're going to run out before it can get much worse.
Yeah, I've got a simple solution. I've got the chat going on here, and I'll tell you something about those oil wells, those pumper jacks, and that water that's coming up out of the ground hot. And like I said, eventually there's no more oil, it's just gas, and eventually the gas runs out. But the part that doesn't change is that water comes out of the ground hot. So right now we have about 3 inches of snow here in Indiana, and I could go down to that Evansville oil field, and there's no snow in the pump jacks because the water comes out of the ground hot. So, and that's available anywhere on the planet, and it's just a matter of how deep you drill your wells.
I had friends in Western New York that had free gas because the natural gas, that they pumped out wasn't commercially usable. So their house could be heated endlessly on what was left from an old gas well.
Well, Ivor, there in Syracuse, New York, some of those gas wells ran out of natural gas, and the city decided rather than plug the wells, as they started pumping the hot water coming out of those depleted gas wells through the houses. So there in Syracuse, New York, they're using geothermal to heat homes. And it's because it was going to cost them $1 million to plug the wells versus it was cheaper just to keep the water coming out of the wells and then run it through all the homes and then inject the water back down into the aquifer. So there is a solution out there if you think creatively, is what I'm trying to tell you.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
I was on this chat, I was telling Warm Springs, Idaho, somebody back in the 1890s drilled a well, hit hot water, used to heat his home. Now that community has 300 houses. They've been heating the houses there in Warm Springs, Boise since 1892 with geothermal. Since the 1980s, the city of Boise, all the buildings in Boise, including the Capitol building, are all heated with geothermal. Nobody advertises about it because it's hard to make money on this. It's free energy. It costs something like $38, $36 a month to heat your home. It's just hot water.
And so I have a kind of a comment from the YouTube. They were saying about beans and grains. Wheat can be had for less than $1 to $2 per 2,000 calories, at least here in the U.S. Wheat sometimes 70 cents per 2,000 calories. And I think they were talking about in terms of the food. But the kind of the point is that is this year, and we're currently at peak, where we have 100 and something million barrels every day being pumped out. And we've been at this plateau for several years, since 2023 or so. We've been at 100 and one digit barrels, between 100 and 103 or something like that. And but the thing is that eventually we will get off the plateau and things will start to decline. And we've already seen that the global hunger has been rising since 2014. as well as we have that wheat now, but in the future when the supplies are tighter, the wheat is obviously going to be more expensive. You can't just buy wheat now and then eat it in 10 years because it's going to go bad.
Well, I'm gonna put this out there, Andrew, and this is something that's come up locally. If you go and talk to your local oil and gas exploration company, it can be Baker Hughes, it could be Neighbors, it could be even Halliburton. You're going to find out every one of those companies has a geothermal development branch of the company. So if you're interested in geothermal, I would talk to those companies, and you're going to find out that they're interested in doing that business. Because if you're in the oil and gas business, you're in the water business, and you're definitely in the hot water business. And so that's definitely a good option for about any community on the planet. But it starts at the town level, at your village level. That's where this is going to get solved. Like what Andrew said, he's actually on target. That's where this is going to get fixed. And it all goes back to just talking to the right people and asking the right questions. And most of those oil and gas companies would enjoy your business for developing geothermal for your community. You just have to ask.
Right. Yeah. Well, in Canada, we don't have oil and gas companies, at least not in Ontario, because we don't have any oil or gas to drill.
Well, they may be out in Alberta, but they're still in
Yeah.
Canada, and you can do geothermal anywhere. It's just a matter how deep are you willing to drill.
Yeah,
So.
and we do have Eavor, right? Eavor,
Right.
they do the closed loop, and they have one of the most promising geothermal projects. And they're working on it in Germany, and it was supposed to be online, I think, end of 2024, and now they're saying sometime in 2026. So they're over a year and a half behind schedule. But I'm still holding out hope that they will succeed, and if they succeed, we might see a real boom in geothermal exploration.
Right. Well, I'm just trying to tell you, if you look up online, any oil and gas exploration company, they have some kind of a geothermal offering. It's just a matter of asking questions and see if you can make it happen in your community. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a strictly geothermal company. You're going to find out all those oil and gas companies have that as a capability.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in an oil and gas area. I mean, I can get it at my house in Texas. I couldn't get it at my house in Wisconsin. End of discussion. It's just not available.
Well, oil and gas, you're not going to find oil deposits. They're only in certain locations on the planet, but you can drill for geothermal anywhere on the planet.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because understand here, like here in North America, the crust here is 43 kilometers thick. What's under that is molten rock.
Yeah, well, yeah, generally,
power source. Yeah.
In most of the world, you only need to go 6 to 7 kilometers deep. And as we saw from Dan's slides, there's a lot of wells that are going down to 10 kilometers. So the depth is achievable. It's just we need to kind of combine that depth with those radiators in order, like that Eavor has, the closed loop radiators, in order for it to work, because the EGS hasn't been working at the great depths. Like someone over here in the chat, they was asking, isn't the main problem with geothermal drilling through super hot rock? No, it's not. That's not. You need to, it's getting to hot rock that's hot enough and then creating a reservoir that's going to get the heat. It's just that in most of the world, you need to go 6 to 8 kilometers deep, and the pressure there is so enormous that the rock is like liquid. It will just flow right into any kind of opening. So every opening you need to reinforce with metal. You need in metal casing, and that's why you make these radiators, basically like the Eavor, and that's the hope, is that is going to work at scale.
Yeah, a lot of the horizontally drill and frac stuff, the wells have to be pressurized, but the maximum drill temperature is 400 degrees Celsius. Steam is supercritical at 373 degrees Celsius. So no, the temperature is not an issue. It's what Andrew's talking about is hydraulic refraction of the rock and pressurizing the well systems. That's the challenge, but that's not a giant challenge compared to building like a nuclear fired power plant. So those are actually easier things to overcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So, John, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, I want just to mention that since 2000, I have a geothermal heat plant. And I did a paper about a few years ago looking at 15 years of using my heat pump, and the saying that it was to replace my heater by fuel, and I found that the heat pump is able to compete to the heat pump, so it is a balance. But I am unable to recover my investment in the heat pump, which it was about 15,000 euros. So everybody say heat plant is very economical. I say, well, I'm not sure. Can you give me your data on that? And because I have mine, and I found that okay, it is you can balance your expenditure, but you don't recover your investment.
Dan, so I think he's talking about heat pumps. Did you have something to respond?
Well, there are a lot of different options. What Jean's talking about, a heat pump, which are relatively shallow, or they're intermediate, which are the 4 to 6 kilometer wells, which are great for cities and villages. Or if you're going to build power plants, it's usually 10 kilometers or deeper to build a power plant for generating electricity. So there are a lot of options. There's no blanket solution to any of this. It really starts at your local level, asking questions, and like I said, even if you get a hold of at the very least an oil and gas exploration company, and just start the conversation and open up the dialogue and try to figure out some solutions to this problem. But I'm just trying to say there's a nice, cheap, clean energy source readily available to about anybody on the planet, and we have the technology to do it today.
Yeah. Okay. So I just want to clarify that I think Jean is talking about heat pumps that are geothermal, but they don't go deep. They're kind of like shallow.
Yeah, it is about 60 centimeter deep.
60 meters.
And 400 square meters.
Yeah, they're at Warm Springs. They're in Boise. The average well there is 3,000 to 6,000 feet deep. But they're in Warm Springs. They've been heating houses there since 1892.
Yeah.
So it's a long-term energy source.
If the geology is right.
If the geology is right. Yeah, exactly. So it depends on the geology.
I'm just trying, no matter what your geology is, that if you drill deep enough, you can do this.
Well, yes.
It just depends on how deep are you willing to drill.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then that's the cost issue, Dan. Of some areas are not cost effective any more than a lot of our oil and gas drilling. It's cost prohibitive, right?
With current technology, but
with existing technology, that's not true. For example, I was talking about when they're drilling out in the Gulf, those wells that are 10 kilometers deep, those are drilled. They're all drilled between 60 and 80 days. So that's how much we've advanced the drilling technology. We also use a lot more robotic equipment, so we don't have to touch the drilling equipment, because at 10 kilometers, you're talking about temperatures greater than 300 degrees Celsius. So what was that, 500-600 degrees Fahrenheit? That's pretty hot drilling equipment. So so that's just the reality of where we're at in the drilling technology. We've had to go deeper.
Hey Dan, somebody on the YouTube asked about drilling technologies for some of this. So all of the Gulf stuff is basically in sedimentary rocks. Can you see doing the same thing in the granite areas where Andrew and I live?
Granite, basalt, especially granite and basalt, those are volcanic rocks. Usually those areas, I'll give you a good example. If you go out to Yellowstone National Park, out there, the rock there is layers of granite, basalt, and tuff. Tuff is volcanic ash. So what you have to do, understand the earth is like an onion. It has layers. So the deeper you drill, if you're in one of those areas, what you're looking for as you drill through the rock, you're looking for those areas of tuff, because that's a relatively soft rock sandwiched between the really hard rock, like the granites and the basalts. And so it's a combination of the depth, the temperature, and that tuff, because that tuff, that's the stuff that you can break up, build a thermal reservoir and actually get some really decent hot water to do something with.
Oh, so well, I would like to add that basically, if you go deep enough anywhere, you're going to hit granite, and so we can do the granite, and Eivor has done granite, and then like Dan was saying in answer to Jean's questions, that a lot of it has to do with timescales, and like once you have the investment, it may take 10, 20, 30 years to pay off, but the point is, say for instance, if we were to get a geothermal plant here, and it might take us 30 years to pay off, but it will last for 200 years if it's done right, and so it can be worth the investment, especially if you're don't have fossil fuels to do anything afterwards. But yeah, and
well, I understand if you're doing a major utility.
That's the problem with wind and solar. They're not going to last 200 years. They'll be lucky to last 20, some of them.
Right, exactly. And that's one of the other differences, is that deep geothermal is not just long lasting, but it's also a base load power. So it will also stay at the same rate.
There's another aspect. I've worked on a lot of coal-fired power plants using steam turbines, the same type of equipment used for geothermal. But I've worked on steam turbines that were built back during the time of George Westinghouse, a century old. So that equipment lasts a very long time, especially if you take good care of it. So the point is, if you put in a geothermal power plant with turbines and generators, you're going to have equipment that's going to last. It's going to be 50 to 100 years. It's going to last a long time. And when we build power plants like that, the big coal-fired power plants or gas turbines, we amortize the cost over 50 years. So it's a long-term investment.
Right. Okay.
Are the big turbines that they are building now, I haven't put one in for about 30 years, as good as the ones they built 100 years ago?
I think the ones we build now are better than the ones we were building 100 years ago, mainly because our the alloys are that much better. The other one is CNC machining is so much better. We're able to build machinery so much more accurately than we could a century ago. So no, it's actually much better today.
Yeah, and then the disadvantage is a blacksmith can't repair it, right?
Well, I mean, we're using CNC machines to build machinery down to the micrometer, and this is machinery that weighs tons. So,
right.
But as far as doing maintenance on it and stuff like that, we generally, about every 10 years, we'll shut down a power plant, crack the case, pull if it's a 100 megawatt steam turbine, that rotor weighs about 6 tons. We'll pull it out, change the bearings, the rotors, what we call the contactors on the generator, sort of put it back together. We have dedicated teams that go around, to each power plant. About every 10 years, we rotate around to a power plant, shut it down and rebuild it, and then put it back in operation. The idea is
with no diesel?
Your local community doesn't have to have the technology or knowledge to do that kind of work. It's the specialized teams that do that.
Yes. Could we do that with no diesel, John, realistically?
Yes.
Yeah. And one of the other things is the local AI, because basically you can have a multi-PhD running on a local computer in, like I can run it on my computer here, or like at a county level, you could have an even smarter one, and you could get all of the information that you need to do all of the maintenance that you need, and connect with other counties and places to get materials that you can't get locally. So it is possible to do it even in a post-fossil fuel world. You just have to organize it in a smart way, kind of thing.
And plan for it. When you put in those facilities, you need to plan for it.
Yeah. I have long-term contracts with my customers, so like I said, every 10 years we show up, shut the power plant down, do maintenance. And the point is the equipment is reliable enough. You don't have to touch it for 10 years. We're only pretty much doing every 10 years, just doing preventive maintenance. As far as if we didn't do preventive maintenance, most of those turbines would probably run for 20 or 30 years without doing maintenance. I hate to say that, but that's true. It's pretty reliable.
The other thing that the utility industry, particularly with power plants, coal-fired power plants has done is they for the big spares and stuff that you need to have, I know Texas at one point had one spare X in the state, right?
Right.
And so that's another thing to add to your list, guys, of things to do as we expand communities. 10 communities need to get together, decide a central location for the spare, and make sure we have the one spare. So we're not like now where if you lose a big transformer, it takes forever to get one.
Barbara, that kind of depends on who you are. If you're one of the big companies like Duke or whatever, because their size is actually a detriment. I actually have a company that builds me substation transformers. They're custom built. So, for example, if you're a Duke, it'll take you 5 or 6 years to get a substation transformer. I can get one built in 6 months. So it really just depends on how big you are. The bigger companies actually have bigger problems than I do. I'm just a smaller guy, but I'm a lot more nimble. It's a lot easier for me to move around. I can replace a substation transformer. Duke, when they have problems like a hurricane comes through, they might lose to 12 or 16 substations. I only have to replace one. They got to replace 16. So that it has to do with size. It's the bigger problems that the bigger guys have.
Okay, well, we're gonna try to kind of round it up, and there's still Ivor and Sean, and then we're gonna try to close it up. Okay, Ivor, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that some of these solar will be lasting longer than you think, because I saw some that were from back in the 1970s that are still running now. So I think everybody has talked about the solar screwing up or something, or having to recycle it, even though it's silicon and silver. Anyway, polysilicon and silver. I think it's going to last 50, 60, 70 years. And you might be, who knows, if the world totally falls apart, you might see some out there working, 100 years from now. Thank you.
Yeah. And that's part of this whole local AI as a transition tool, is that a lot of that, the polysilicate doesn't degrade, but you may need to resolder it and things like that. And so having that skill set available,
doing maintenance on it is important.
Exactly. The maintenance and knowing how to do it is very important. Okay, Jean, go ahead.
Well, apart of that, my present heating is just for geothermal, so it's doing well. But I want to mention that in the Rhine Valley, which is a big urban, they inject water, cold water, in order to get hot water. But in fact, this injection brought a lot of earthquake, and the project was killed by the earthquake. So you see, when you it is a problem just to inject water in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the things about that, Jean, it's kind of interesting. The United States is probably number one when it comes to geothermal. Number 3 in the list is actually Japan. So, and it's and understand it's not new. It's geothermal is very ancient in Japan.
Right. Yeah. Well, they live on the Pacific Rim.
Right. Well, if you've ever been to a bathhouse in Japan, you'll understand. I mean, some of those places are 6, 7 centuries old.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. So, any final remarks, or we'll close out? Okay. So, for our YouTube people here, let's just end with these thoughts. One concrete thing you can do, one neighbor or counselor you can talk to, and one way to bring love into your local politics. Okay, so as we found you, we leave you in the infinite love and infinite peace of the infinite creator within you and all around you, my friends. Therefore, go forth, therefore rejoicing in that infinite power and infinite peace within you and around you, my friends. All right. Okay, great.